Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the second installment of Claims Corner from Insurance Nexus by Reuters Events. I'm Brian Falchuk. I'm managing partner of Insurance Evolution Partners, and my last role in a carrier was Chief Claims Officer. So I was in the shoes that some of you are in, or working around those shoes at least. And I'm very excited to be here with Bryant Vernon from Aviva Canada to basically talk about what all of us are in the midst of right now. This is an unprecedented, very different kind of time, and at least we're all in it together. But on that note, this is a chance through these sessions that Insurance Nexus is putting on for us to share some ideas, some real life experience about how we're getting through this, ways that we can cope, ways that we can thrive and continue to move forward. Because despite everything going on, the world is not stopped. There are still claims coming in. There's still insureds who need us to stand by them. And so it's very important that we're able to do that as organizations. And also we have our people that we need to think about and how we bring them together in this moment as well. Bryant, thank you so much for joining. I'm excited to hear more about what's going on at Aviva in Canada. And if you could just give us a little bit blurb about yourself and then what Aviva looks like in Canada for my American compatriots who may not know the Aviva name. What is Aviva and specifically in the Canadian market?
Sure. I've been at Aviva for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years at the end of this month. And I am the Chief Claims Officer for Aviva Canada. And it's been quite a 2 years. My first day on the job, there was the largest by volume claim event in Aviva Canada history. We had the May windstorm. And for my 2-year anniversary, obviously going through some interesting times
Yeah,
as we speak.
but it's
Before I
not
was at,
you, right? It's
it's
not
not,
just
no, I don't
yeah.
think I'm
Let's
saying
just
it's not
clarify
me.
that.
I've heard some rumors, but I don't think it's me.
All right.
But before I came to Aviva Canada, I was at a company called Solera. So most insurance folks will know Autotex, which is an appraisal platform. And I was the global head of data science and services and worked on a number of analytical products primarily for the insurance market, and did a consulting work as well with probably most of the top carriers in the world, well, at least in Europe, North America, in North America, a little bit in South America as well. Just looking at their data to understand where there are opportunities for improvement and providing them with direction as to how do they improve their overall efficiency and improve indemnity control as well, and obviously primarily in their auto lines of business. And before that, I was at Liberty Mutual, and I basically did a tour of duty around the claims operation, ran casualty, auto, advanced analytics, operational analytics, supply chain, and procurement, and a lot of other things as
A
well.
tour. Yeah, you're not
And
kidding.
I did a tour. No, I did a
Yeah.
tour. And before that, I was at I did a stint at McKinsey where I primarily focus on the insurance sector. So that's a little
Okay.
bit about me. Aviva Canada, so we have north of 4,000 employees. We're about 5.6 billion in GWP, and we were or are the second largest insurance carrier in Canada. And we do a mix of business. So we have both personal as well as commercial. And it's probably roughly a 50-50 split. Probably a little bit weighted more on the personal side than
Hmm.
on the commercial. But my team handles all claims. So we handle both the personal as well as the commercial. And the commercial it's a broad mix. It's everything from standard CGL type stuff to surety. So it's across the board.
And of course, you're part of Aviva PLC, the large British
That's
insurer.
correct.
I was at
We are part
Hiscox,
of
and
the PLC.
our headquarters was
Oh, okay.
giant Aviva Tower, and then there was ours right next to it, owned by Lloyd's. But yeah, so for people who don't know Aviva, it's largest carrier in the UK, big domestic business, and obviously a global business as well.
Yeah, there are operations. I forget how many. It's changing, right? But I know we have a number of operations in other European countries as well, like Italy and France. and
Yeah.
Ireland and so on. Yeah.
And super innovative. So I've heard some very cool things that Aviva's done in the UK business. Someone was telling me that before the FNOL call is even complete, in some cases, they can have money in the insurance bank account, which was almost creeping people out like it was too fast. But whether that's 100% true or not, I don't know. But it was very interesting and innovative, and shows like actually there's a lot we can do. There are a lot of tools at our disposal. Just a question of our readiness to try them out and figure out how to use them.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that specific thing because that's something that we'd love to do in the Canadian market, and the whole banking infrastructure in the Canadian market makes it fairly difficult.
Mm,
Surprisingly, I was coming from the States, I'm used to like you can PayPal somebody and the money shows up right away, or you
yeah.
can Venmo or whatever. Uh, and you can certainly do a transfer of funds, wire transfer, and you'll see the money immediately in the U.S. bank account. But in Canada, even if it's wire transferred, sometimes there's a cool off period of like 3 days
Uh,
where you can't access the funds, and so that makes it very tricky for us because one of the things that we would love to do is to get funds to our customers as quickly as possible, and
yeah.
especially in a time like now. And I think that's very important, especially for folks who want to do things independently. And there's a number of people who want to do things independently, whether it's to get their own car or to oversee their own repairs at the house or what have you. The faster that you get them the funds, the faster they're able to get back to normal. And usually the happier
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah. And of course, those delays, they're not going to give credit where credit's due. They'll blame you
Oh
for
no,
yeah. So it's,
it's
yeah.
always our fault.
And obviously so look, this is a time when all of the pressures around needing that money are heightened. It could be someone who's out of work, furloughed, or at risk of that happening. Groceries cost more if you can even get them. So there's a number of reasons why I could see why people would be even more
Yeah.
concerned about the delivery of things like funds or the closure of their claim. And yet there's also pressures that are lengthening things. I want to get into that, but maybe just to set
Hmm.
the stage for where you guys were at from an innovation and moving the needle forward or the operation forward, whether that's internal or customer facing. What were some of the things that you guys had achieved leading up to this moment? And maybe specifically some of the things that in hindsight, you're like, oh, great thing we got that in place because look how beneficial that's been.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work that has been focused both internally and externally. I don't think it's either one or the other. Uh, the way I look at it is happy employees mean have a higher likelihood of having happy customers.
Yeah.
And so you need to make the job better for your employees as well as making the experience better for your customers because there's just such a tight interrelationship between the two. Um, so some of the things that we've done in advance of this, we've done a number of integrations. We integrated with uh, the Collision Reporting Center, so the CRC within Canada. It's typically where you'll go after uh, an automobile accident. You'll go there and report it. And previously it was not integrated, and so there'd be a significant lag between when a report was made and then when we were informed of it. And then there was be a disconnect with the customer. So that's something that we did the integration on. We're the first company in Canada to do that, which has helped out. It's expedited quite a lot. We've introduced SMS last year as well. So that was an innovation that we prioritize actually above and beyond having an app or having a more robust online
Hmm.
capability or like web-based capability, because that's what customers were saying they wanted. And so
Yeah.
we spent a lot of time looking at NPS verbatim, etc. And that came up as something that people really wanted. And I think it's because it's a platform that they have, regardless of,
Yeah.
like whether it's an iPhone or an Android or whatever. You don't have to download a specific app. People just want like, just let me text you, ask you questions, or at least text me, right? And so we started
Right.
off with one direction, and this year we're working on bi-directional capability so that there could be more of a conversation, and that's absolutely critical because people don't want they
Yeah.
they obviously don't want to visit you, and they don't necessarily want to like go through the process of installing something on the phone. And so if we can give them that capability, that people really value that.
Yeah.
We also introduce analytical tools. So one of them is the total loss tool, and allows our folks to identify total loss at the FNOL, and
Oh,
that's had some significant benefits for us. We almost reduced rental time, from 20 days to 9 days, I believe, as an
wow.
example. Um, and we are
Because
also
that's
able
all
to make,
waste. All of that
it's
period,
all,
it's
yeah,
all
it's
for
always,
nothing. So yeah, I would
and
have
we
thought
also
maybe 5
digitize
to
a lot of
10 days, but
forms.
yeah, I mean that's fantastic. You're able to get further than that.
Well, it's because people are being set up at the FNOL. So our settlement rates at FNOL also went up significantly. So
Mm,
we have the tools that allow our folks to value it and to make an offer. And what we saw is that the settlement disputes, when you go through that process, dropped by 80%,
wow.
which is crazy, right?
Yeah. But
Uh,
I mean, you
and
can
that was
imagine as
unexpected.
an insured, just to be in the midst of all that and you're expecting a fight because that's what everyone tells you, right? Your carrier's your
Yeah, yeah.
adversary. And it's like you're calling to tell them you're expecting this whole process. Like, oh, okay, well, we recognize that's it. Here's what we can offer you for your car. And it's like all of a sudden your guard not just drops, but like falls away. To me, it just seems like, oh, I wish it was that simple. No back and forth, just
Yeah,
on the spot, they get it.
and we use tools that allow us to, one of the challenges previously is that it was a black box. The valuation was
Mhm.
a black box to customers, and you'd give them a number like, where the hell did that come from, right?
Yeah.
And so we now are synced up with some open source, I call them open source, but publicly available data that they can cross-reference, right? And they can say, okay, does this make sense or not as a valuation? And that's helped out a lot as well. People feel and it makes sense, right? We're being transparent. We're showing them how we're coming to the valuation. I think that also helps out a lot because it builds
Yeah.
credibility with the customer.
Yeah. That's great. And I could see where right now it's even more valuable to have that. Anything that takes out the typical process at this moment when it may just be more complicated to get through that process, um, must
Oh,
be
right
paying
now
dividends.
yeah, I think you just think about how the entire supply chain has been impacted by the shutdown. I mean, if we take total losses as an example, the whole salvage and towing and storage, like there's some storage yards they're not even open, right? And
Yeah.
so uh, and obviously the salvage market is a bit frozen. I mean, there's just a lot of components, and so you have to figure out how do you make all that work. We've had some really good success working with our rental partners to make sure that if people need a car, most people don't, but there are some folks who are essential workers, et cetera, who are, you know, um, going out every day to help out the rest of their
Yeah.
communities in different ways, and we want to make sure that we can support them and help get them back on the road if they need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crucial right now. And of course, you don't want that story about how Aviva kept that physician, that nurse, that first responder from being able to be there for people. So you have to be able to be responsive and make sure that those who need to be taken care of are.
Yeah, I mean, our aspiration is to be as quick as fast as possible. In my former role at Solera, the CEO, um, had the saying, "Fast but accurate," right? So he has a military background, Tony Aquila, quite an intense person, but you had to love his passion because he was really about, like you got to be the best, and being the best is not just being the smartest, but it's being precise. Like you've got to be where you need to be, and you got to be there like on time, and you got to execute quickly, right? It's not just
Yeah.
about executing well, but executing quickly. And so, one of the things or at least exploring, is how do you balance that trade-off between quality, if there is one. Sometimes there's not really one, between quality and speed, right? And how fast can you push something before you start seeing quality deteriorate, right? And what is that limit? And the reason why that's so important is customers both value quality, but they also really value speed. And when
Yeah.
we look at NPS, data. And we do, one of the other innovations, which is not an external innovation, is just how much we've invested in our data infrastructure across the board. And some of that's like technical, like the infrastructure, some of it's talent, like just getting analysts or analysts and data scientists into the company and getting them embedded. And some of it's cultural, right? Just getting
Hmm.
people used to thinking about their business in terms of numbers, right? And so we've made a significant investment. So we have a lot more visibility into our business, into the KPIs than we've ever had before. And we're looking at this data to understand, like, where do we have opportunities? How can we optimize either the customer experience, expense management, indemnity management, so on and so forth. And one of the things we found, at least in the exploration of the NPS data, is that there is a direct or indirect correlation between how long it takes and how happy somebody is.
Sure.
And the longer, like, it's just clear as day that the longer it takes, and you can argue, well, maybe that's just because that's a really indicator of complexity, not necessarily of some, like, not just the person was slow, but by and large, it doesn't really, like, even when you control for complexity and other stuff like that, it comes down to, if it takes long, that typically means the customer has to do more work, right?
Yeah.
They have to call up, and so the faster you can do that, there's just less points of friction with the customer in that experience. And so a lot of our innovation investment has been focused on how do you get fast and accurate? Like, what are the tools that you need to put into place? What are the points of friction, right? Because points of friction often lead to delays of some kind, right? Whether you're going from one system to another, whether there's a process that's confusing, whether there's an interaction that is slowed down because of something, right? Whether it's a regulatory thing or it could be an internal process sort of thing, right? So we've done a lot of work to investigate what those points of friction are and how do we address them and accelerate the entire claims process, all without sacrificing quality.
Yeah.
And so that some of that had to do with the speed of making decisions. And so that's our investment in the data visualization. So we have fairly extensive data visualization now internally. We use Qlik. I mean, you can use Tableau or MicroStrategy or whatever, but our poison is Qlik. And so we have pervasive data down to the adjuster that managers can use to make decisions. Also, our frontline employees can use the data to make decisions as well. And so, no, you look like you're about to ask a question. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's, I mean, I think it's really interesting and valuable. I think probably there's lots of tools out there. The culture piece may be ultimately the trickiest one. And that what I wanted to get into was a bit of the current situation, that a project like that and moving people's minds and how they work and their acceptance of data and their understanding of how to bring the tool in is it's a hard enough task when everyone's co-located, or you have people in clusters and you can do the training and see them one-on-one. How I'm curious about what innovation looks like today, where you guys are with that journey. Are things put on hold? Are you still engaging? And specifically where you're still engaging, how are you able to bring your people along in that journey?
Yeah, so I would say that we quickly adapted to the new scenario. One of the things that we were concerned about was whether or not our technical infrastructure could handle it, because once it became clear that people had to basically shelter in place, no one was going to come into the office, which means that your VPN and your telephony system, et cetera, has to be robust enough to handle it. Hopefully you have VoIP, because if you don't have VoIP, you're in bad shape. And we had made a number of these investments going into it, not because we were expecting it, just because it was good business practice. And we were able to scale up to handle all that. Now that's fine, so that people can work remotely. Then it was all about how do you keep the team feeling cohesive? What are the things you can do to make that happen? And we spend a lot of time doing things like this, like connecting with people in this way. We've made extensive use of Microsoft Teams, and we've had a lot of fun. So we do social type of activities remotely.
Yeah.
There's been bake-offs. There's been
Right. I think I lost your audio there.
regardless of where you are. Am I here?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah,
Did you
you
lose
had
me?
me. I had bake-offs and I got very excited.
Uh-oh.
So that you were saying ways that you sort of kept that connectivity, which we were talking about before
No.
the webinar opened. Well, this is to the point.
Okay, I can kind of see you.
This is one of the
You
issues
look like
we
a
have
creature, unfortunately.
in this situation is connectivity.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I was just talking about how well this has been working out for us. So it looks like, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, just from our ability to engage across teams, that has not been affected as much as we thought it would be. In terms of our innovation portfolio, I mean, we've definitely have revisited the innovation portfolio, and I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Turn off my video. All right.
Let's see if that helps with the bandwidth.
All right, it says we are hearing you fine now.
Yes.
I just can't hear anybody else. I can't hear you, Brian, so I have no idea if you're asking me questions or not. But you said that you can hear me, so it's definitely impacted our innovation portfolio. There are some things that we have paused. There's other things that we've actually doubled down in. And so one of the things, I hear you every now and then. So one of the things that we have been investing in, or we've been looking at, is fraud analytics. And so we're looking to, as much as possible, move away from an older paradigm, which is heavy manual process of investigation. I think there's still a place for that. But one of the things we found out is that models and algorithms are much better at identifying fraud than people are. And so we're really redirecting a lot of our innovation resources into that area in the short term. Don't know if you can hear me.
Yes. The question is, can you hear me?
I can now hear you.
Now you can hear me. Okay. No, that's really valuable. Are you looking at those tools to supplement or to take the place of? Because there's a few different ways you can deploy those things, whether it's in lieu of or maybe to do that upfront identification and then filtering things to the SIU, or have you not thought about that answer yet?
So we did an analysis of a fairly extensive analysis of fraud, and what we found out is that we weren't sophisticated enough, and that there were customers who are going through an unpleasant experience that should never have gone through that experience. And what we wanted to do, the primary motivation is just to get more accurate and to minimize the negative impact on our customers. And so what we love to do is just say everybody who comes in they're a good apple, right? And the algorithm tell us if it's not a good apple. And not only will it tell us if it's, or at least a suspected not good apple, right? And if that's the case, it's just not gonna, and I told my head of fraud, I said, I want a red light, green light. I want to be really easy for the adjuster. If it's a green light, you don't think about it. And that should probably happen for 95 to 99, 98% of folks, is that it should just be straight through without any problems, as expedited a process as possible. But when it's a red light, it can't just be a red light, because no one knows what to do with a red light. It's got to be actionable, right? So
Yep.
it's got to be tied to specific follow-on questions that would provide enough clarity to determine whether or not it should be redirected down the fraud investigation route. And I see that this overall process is a hybrid process. So it's some of it's machine and some of it's human, right? And I actually think the claims organization in the future is going to look more and more like that. It's going to look bionic. It's not purely robotic. It's not purely
That's a
human.
cool way of putting it. It's better than automating everything and the Terminators all take over. I like the bionic.
I just don't think you'll ever completely replace the need for human interaction. I think
Yeah.
like the situation that we're in now is really highlighting how like we take it for granted when it's always there, but
Yeah.
when you take it away, you really feel it. Like it's so important to have that person-to-person connection, and I feel that's really the case with an insurance, especially if you're going through your first claim. Obviously, if you had 10 claims, you could probably do self-service. But if you're going through your first claim, people have a ton of questions. They have no idea what to expect. And like you said, they might come in thinking, oh, this is going to be an antagonistic thing, and I'd rather talk to a person or what have you,
Yeah.
rather than get who knows what the perspective is on an online journey. I mean, some folks are comfortable with that. But I think what will happen is that the folks who are with an insurance, their job is going to look more and more like uh, like a high-end customer care role. And they'll still need to have the technical knowledge, but I think over time, a lot of that technical capability, assuming regulators can keep up with it, you have to imagine a future scenario where a regulator licenses an algorithm and says, you can now adjudicate a claim, right? So we're not there yet. Um, but you would expect at some point in the future, you will move in that direction. And I know regulators have moved to approve some, I think, machine learning based pricing
Mm.
algorithms. That to me is a fairly significant step in that direction um, towards accepting that on the claim side. So I think over time, some of that technical stuff will be managed by uh, algorithms or computers or what have you. Uh, but once again, I think it's going to be absolutely critical for there to be a person or liaison there who can walk the customer through, like, this is what's going on.
Mm.
And I think there's going to still be some judgment calls that are going to be difficult to codify within a model or an algorithm where it still makes sense. And we can talk like, and I don't necessarily know how the talent mix will shift. Like you might see some concentration of talent, especially technical talent in the reinsurance space, right?
Mm.
And less so uh, uh, in the primary
On the
insurance
primary.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that could, because the highly technical stuff, you might need it for the big stuff, right? But for the little stuff that can be fairly easily processed, you probably don't need as much technical knowledge, right, to bear. So that you can imagine a scenario like that, at least I can, playing out over time.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting.
That
I
that
think,
that's informing our thinking around like the fraud and the rest of the operation. Where can
yeah.
we leverage tools like that to either simplify or automate some of the decision making? And then as that frees up people's time, how do we reinvest that time back into delivering a better customer experience?
Yeah. I um I think that actually a point you just made, it looks like my video might be out as well too. So maybe I'll
I can
keep
still see
going.
you.
You can see me. All right. Um,
Yeah.
so Brian, you said something that frankly I've not heard yet, and I think actually it's really appropriate for us all to consider is this is actually a moment where we're proving out that idea that people still matter, because this, a lot of us have lost that personal connection in our day-to-day lives, and we feel that difference. And so I think it's a great reminder that it's not going to be full automation or automation. Um, it's going to be, I love this bionic. I'm gonna start using this, but I will give you credit for it.
Thank
I
you.
think that's brilliant, right? There has to be a mix, and what a great reminder. So I was going to ask you about, points that we take forward, that we're learning right now that can inform the future. And I think you probably hit the most salient one that frankly I've not heard people discussing yet. So you heard it here first, everyone. We still got almost 80 people on the line still in the last minute. So very, very valuable commentary. So yeah, I mean, Brian,
So I just
thank you.
want to say that
Yeah,
I just want to add one other thing. I know we're close at the time. I mean, that's the same way that we look at data. And I talked about the culture, and I know whether or not you consider this innovation or not, I think it falls within the realm. We are now a heavy data and analytics shop, um, but we're not beholden to numbers. For example, nobody's end of year performance is going to have a KPI target on it on the front line. Because what we found out is when you put numbers as goals for folks, they completely lose the spirit of why they're doing their work, and
yeah,
their job becomes about hitting a number versus delivering an excellent experience. The onus of using the data is really on all the managers, right? There is some on the front line, but it's the manager's responsibility to develop an intuition around the numbers and to understand when something doesn't look right, and
mm,
to dig in to understand, why does this not look right? Is it justified? If someone's NPS is low and they dig into it and they find out, oh, it's low because in this market we have non-renewed people or we've increased the rate. So the NPS reflects that, not the performance of the individual, right? Um, and so on. Like, it's their job to know that. So when they go to coach somebody, they're not coaching them on the number, because in some cases the number is just reflective of an externality that's not under their control.
yeah,
But even if the number is reflective, does accurately reflect their performance, talking to them about the number is not going to help them. But talking to them about specific behaviors that they're exhibiting that lead to that number, right? That is what makes a difference. And we've seen a significant improvement in our KPIs across the board. Like, we've more than doubled NPS on both auto and property. Production has significantly improved. Our expenses have gone down, et cetera. I think primarily because we've taken a very different approach from a lot of other carriers, certainly from my experience, where we had essentially a balanced scorecard. We're thinking the balanced scorecard, like, you can't game that. Well, guess what? Like, you can.
hey,
It just takes
yeah,
more work.
yeah, yeah,
So anyway, I just wanted to add that in before I got off, because I thought that
yeah.
was something that was worth sharing. Yeah.
No, I think that's great, and honestly, really valuable. Not just to hear, some of the things you're working on and what's going on up north. It sounds, similar, and I think you're facing a lot of things. We all are.
Yeah.
It's good to see you back. Videos back. Um, so, Brian,
Yeah.
thank you for joining and for sharing so openly today. I hope for everyone that has listened in, this has been valuable for you. And remember, this is an ongoing series, so you can tune in next week, where the conversation will be around collaborations, where Alan Demers will be hosting Don Jones from MassMutual. So you can hear some more of the perspective from MassMutual and this theme of collaboration, which again, it's a different space to collaborate in when you can't all come together. And as a business, it's always talked about as a relationship business. Those in-person meetings have become the norm for us. So how are you still building collaborations in a different paradigm? And I would add, you should all have in the chat a link to a survey, 3 simple questions. The insights from the survey will be really valuable to all of us about how we make it through, what we're looking at right now, the impact of the crisis on all of us. So, Insurance Nexus has always done a great job with their surveys and giving us all insights about what's going on as a market as a whole. Learning from our peers, the whole reason why we do these sessions, really valuable. So please do take a moment and fill that out. Bryant Vernon, again, thank you for joining me. And it's great to hear about what's going on at Aviva Canada. And I appreciate your time. And this bionic thing, it's given me a great new quote to use. So thank you for that one.
Excellent. Well, you use
All
it
right,
well.
everyone.
Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate the
Take
time.
care.
All right. Take care.